theatre companies are, who the social service agencies might be in an area. We're a tiny team, so these collaborations are essential because one, no matter how much research we do, we can never have the roots in a community that these local organizations already have. So by collaborating with them, we have access to their audience. It also allows us to expand the theme of the exhibition beyond visual arts into dance, into theatre, into poetry, and we've had all of those various collaborations. And it's been a great outcome because in the Bronx, for example, it was a huge geographical area that we wanted to reach, and these collaborations allowed us to reach their audience, and we offered each of the arts groups a bedroom in the house to create their own project. And following our project, the collaboration has continued in the Bronx Cultural Alliance. So here was a piece that an artist did with an after-school program across the road, Bronx Housing Works, and she collaborated with Theatre of the Oppressed, which is an amazing, model. What they do is, so Melanie Green started off working for about 3 months with this group of kids. And one exercise that she did with them, she asked them to stand in a reverse circle, meaning their backs to each other, and she asked them what was the symbol that most represented to them their community, and she said 3/4 of the kids went like that, a gun. And this is the Bronx. So she started working with them on this game called Once Upon a Time. It's a fairy tale game with people, places, and events from fairy tales, and you sort of exchange cards and make new fairy tales. But realizing very quickly that tales of blonde German princesses were not really applicable to kids in the Bronx, she had them make their own Bronx deck of cards. And from the narratives that came out in those deck of cards, she then did the collaboration with Theatre of the Oppressed. And it's a forum-style theatre where the narratives are taken, they act them out, and in this particular instance, this was a mother who was being beaten up by the husband. And as a result of the domestic violence, the child was acting out in school. So this was enacted before an audience much like you, and then the people in Theatre of Oppressed said, so you saw some problems in this play. Yeah, horrific problems. So how might that scene have been turned? How could the child have, or one character have reacted differently, and it might have had a different outcome? So people put up their hands and they come up with a suggestion. And if the suggestion is regarded as feasible, not wishful thinking, like tell your dad not to hit your mom again, that person who suggested it gets up and reenacts the scene with a different twist. And it was so incredibly powerful. Here's all the kids sort of putting their hands up, with different solutions. And it was really moving, particularly around this scene of abuse and how the teacher at school was not picking up on why the kid was behaving so badly in school. And we had an audience for this of a lot of teachers from the Bronx. And so this project has now been taken up into 2 schools in the Bronx. And so here's another scene where they're enacting. And the lady up there is the teacher, and she's always got her ruler to hit. Other ways, other collaborations lead to people cooking workshops. Sophia Maldonado did a great mural in the kitchen of the house, and we had a workshop on a healthy recipe for empanadas. And so a ton of people came in for that who might not have come into it for an art exhibition. But if you think of the exhibition as sort of the hub of the visual arts exhibition as the hub, all this programming provides lots of different directions that people can encounter the art experience. This was a modern dance performance in the house. This was again in the bank. Again, we asked that the programming be site-specific and respond to the theme of the exhibition so that they interact with the artwork. And in terms of legacy, we're always conscious of what we leave behind. We do a lot of surveys, so we survey our artists on what their experience was, and at our welcome desk, at our visitors desk, we ask people to sign in, And then a week after they've been to the exhibition, we send them a survey asking them to evaluate their experience and how would they have done it better, and did they feel welcomed, and what, how did, lots of questions, and that research really comes back into how we shape exhibitions. And we create maps of each area. So we had 9,000 people come to the Bronx, all of who got this map, and so you came to our exhibition, but you might also want to go to this restaurant for lunch, or this cultural center up the road, and so it creates a lot of cultural tourism. And I'll just end with our next exhibition, which is opening next week. An Israeli artist called Yantilli doing a video piece. And this is our next big project back in Harlem. It's Broadway Housing Authority. And it's a very blighted area of Harlem, and they're building a 14-story residential low-income building. But it's also going to have a nursery school, a Head Start, and a museum of storytelling in the building. And they've approached us to do the first exhibition there and bring visibility to the site. And we're also looking at the moment, this is going to be in spring 2014, we're looking at other satellite spaces in Sugar Hill to be able to expand the programming and the outreach beyond the building. So that's my presentation. I cut out a lot, but I'd really love to open this up to discussion because I think discussion can bring out a whole lot of issues that individuals might be interested in. So thank you. We had started sort of putting notices in graduate programs into the MA programs, and then we had a really good, one girl was actually outstanding, she became a project manager for us. And then we met with the professors and we talked about the training that we do, and now the School of Visual Arts, NYU, and Columbia have approved us for credit. So it was really on a university by university basis, because they saw the quality of experience
always have to have a certificate of occupancy?
Absolutely. Because I mentioned the contract we had with landlords. We also have insurance. I don't know if I said this. I said it just, yeah, we have insurance. And a C of O is essential to have this because it's, and when we, for our openings, and you can't afford not to do things properly.
No, but I can't imagine a building like that in that shape, that's on the screen having a C of O.
Well, it doesn't yet, but it will be by the time we get into it. We're not going into spring. We're going to be in the areas which the nursery school is going to be in, and that opens in September.
So you're taking parts of it?
No, the building is actually, it's much more finished than it looks like there. The building it's going to be finished before we ask for an asbestos-free certificate because we're bringing so many kids into it. The director is from an urban planning background, so she's really the person who can help with it. And we refuse sites that we don't think are safe.
Can you draw the distinction between pop-up galleries and pop-up shops in your model?
Yeah, it's real bugbear. Thank you. Pop-ups, I think pop-ups are more opportunistic in the sense that there is an idea, say for a Halloween store, or a Christmas store, or an exhibition, and people are looking for a site to place a given project. And they put it in, and they have their project, and they go, our model begins with the site. So it begins with the research of the site, and it's about community engagement. So it's much more of a holistic model than pop-up, because pop-up just sounds like you come and you go. And while we are nomadic, we really try to do this kind of community engagement. So I would say that's the kind of...
You're associating pop-up with commercial, more with commercial.
I guess more commercial and more just the use of the space rather than for the project. It's project-centered rather than community-centered. I mean, it's a distinction I make, but I disagree.
What are other ways you engage the community other than just the historic site? What other ways do you try and make your presence known throughout the community other than bringing people to your site?
Well, when we do a lot of some of the things our volunteers do that just canvas to make people aware of it, lights in the day meet at the beginning of each exhibition with all the artists. You know, after I've done the studio visits, we're invited that they all come together to talk about the projects they want to do for the exhibition, creating kind of this collaborative nature, this teamwork nature. And then, because most of the work is commissioned, I work with the artists to support those commissions. Sometimes they're of a scale that they haven't done before, so I'm very much a mentor. And so I'm holding all the different parts together, but it's much more about how to make this process involved with a bigger community than I was when I was in a museum. I was much more involved in sort of relationships and works, not historical issues. Than this is a much more socially engaged form of curating.
The project you have on the screen here, I have several questions about it. So is this the first time you've ever been asked to do or approached to have the no longer empty model in a new building?
Yes.
How far in advance were you asked to do this? It sounded like it might be there for 6 months. And then what kind of a project budget are you anticipating?
I misanswered because the first time we did that, there's a very big developer in the city called Jonathan Rose, and he did a green building that was, there's a kind of model that gets a lot of funding, and it's subsidized, partly subsidized and market value all in one building. The idea is to sort of integrate communities a little bit more. And it had a huge retail space. A lot of the apartments had been rented, but the space itself, the retail space hadn't, and he invited us to do the exhibition there. And he paid for that entire exhibition because he knew he was using us as in somewhat of a community engagement, certainly, to give something to the residents to unite them around the site. In this particular project, there is no funding with it because they're struggling themselves, you know. But they're going to, their role will be to introduce us to a lot of the local community, the councils, and we're applying for funding for this. I think, you're asking about our budget, I think?
Yeah. What do you think, just based on your several years experience, what do you think?
Well, the grants cost around $70,000 a project, and that's sort of roughly where our exhibitions are at now, not including our running costs. So we're not just on the exhibition. So it goes into materials for the space, you know, the paint, drywall, the art anchors, supporting the artists' installations, honorariums for our speakers. So we're working on a sort of $60,000 budget.
Yeah. Well, you were making those comments comparing your curatorial model with the museum models, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. You mentioned the curatorial lab that you run,
Yeah.
and how the people that are involved with that program, what kind of projects do they work on, and how are they involved with the projects that you guys do in general?
So the curatorial lab is just our second. We did one on 8th Street in the last fall, and this is our second, which will open in November. And we have a site in Chinatown for them. So they're not involved with our projects beyond the lab. I mean, my hope is that it will be a new bunch of curators